This is Bill Bates, and you have found episode 2 of the So Long and Thanks for All the Innovation podcast. The name is a riff on the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and if you look closely, you'll see that the URL for my newsletter is Bistromathics. In the Hitchhiker's Guide, Bistromathics is a fictional form of mathematics based on the idea that numbers behave differently in restaurants than they do anywhere else in the universe. You know what I mean. The bill is $67.89, but somehow when you split it 3 ways, throw in a tip, everyone ends up paying a different amount, and no one gets change. To quote the guide, just as Einstein observed that space was not an absolute, but depended on the observer's movement in space, and that time was not an absolute, but depended on the observer's movement in time, so it is now realized that numbers are not absolute, but depend on the observer's movement in restaurants. It's chaotic. It's illogical. Now, imagine applying that same logic to the cost of college. Today, we're talking about the real cost of college, the sticker price, the net price, the weird math in between, and why it can sometimes be cheaper for a middle-class family to send their kid to Harvard than it is to their local state university. I kid you not. Let's start with the part everyone knows. Tuition is high. There are lots of reasons why. Reduced state support for higher education, a race to create more extravagant student housing and campus perks. Though, as the father of 2 public university graduates, I can say with authority that there's nothing fancy about a triple dorm room. But there's also new administrative requirements. More generous financial aid, which has created a chicken and egg scenario in which higher tuition drives more generous aid, with more generous aid enabling schools to increase tuition, and so on. Let's look at some numbers. Yay, math. In 1970, the average annual tuition at a public 4-year college was about $394. Not a typo. For the cost of a plane ticket across the country, you could have gone to your state university. At a private nonprofit, annual tuition was around $1,700. Adjusted for inflation, and you get about $2,700 and $11,600 today. As you are probably well aware, those are not the numbers you will find on your invoice when tuition payments come due. In 2024, the actual sticker prices are closer to $9,750 for public schools and $37,600 for private. Remember, we are just talking about tuition now. Add housing and meals, and the numbers become even more eye-popping. That is not just inflation. That is rideshare surge pricing Christmas morning with a Taylor Swift concert in town. And that's also where most people stop. They see those numbers, they panic, and assume the entire system is broken beyond repair. But, and here's the important part, that's just the sticker price. And who even pays that these days? What people actually pay is often very different, and weirdly, more consistent with historical norms than you might think. So let's talk about net price. What students pay after scholarships, grants, and aid, which is, after all, most students. In fact, only about 10 to 20% of students actually pay the sticker price for tuition. And here's where the difference between average and median comes into play. Average net prices are often dragged upward by the small percentage of students who do pay full price. What we really want is the median net price, the price paid by a typical student. Now that data is harder to find, but my crack team of AI bots have pulled some estimates. In 1970, The median net price at public colleges, the amount most people could expect to pay, was about $1,000. Today, that number is roughly $8,500. During that same time period, 1970 to today, median household income went from about $13,000 to about $90,000. So in 1970, a year of public college would cost you about 8% of a household's income. Today, that number is 9 or 10%. So when you look at it that way, it's not exactly the apocalyptic collapse in affordability that headlines would suggest. But also, not a system anyone would describe as straightforward and simple. And that's part of the problem. It's also a path towards some possible solutions. Before we get to that, though, let's dig in a little bit more on the private versus public school paradox. Now here's where things get even more interesting. If you're a middle-income family, say earning $100,000 a year, it might actually cost less to send your kid to the Ivy League than to your state university. Thanks to billion-dollar endowments and aggressive aid programs, many elite colleges offer seriously discounted rates for families that earn between $75,000 and $125,000 a year. For example, a family with an income of $103,000 a year might pay about $11,000 total to attend a school with an $85,000 a year sticker price. That's just over 10% of income, and again, lower than many public institutions ask of in-state students. And for low-income students, the cost can be even more affordable. We're talking maybe $500 a year or less at places like Princeton, MIT, and Stanford. The catch, of course, is that these schools are relatively small, and you actually have to get in. Minor detail, I know. Study hard, kids. So obviously most students don't go to Harvard. They go to public universities, where the sticker price is lower, but the aid can also be thinner. That is changing in many places. The University of Texas system, for example, now covers full tuition and fees for families earning less than $100,000. That's across all 9 of their campuses. The University of North Carolina and the University of Michigan have similar guarantees for in-state students under a certain threshold. So while public colleges may not have the gilded dorms of the privates or billion-dollar endowments, they are getting very creative, especially with aid programs to try and meet families where they are. And in-state tuition for residents is already significantly lower, sometimes zero. Let's put a pin in that fact, though, and return to it later, because I'd argue being more selective in where students apply geographically could go a long way to mitigating student debt. And finally, let's not lose sight of the fact that these schools are also some of the top universities in the country, with academic offerings to rival any private school. And if you happen to be a sports fan, well, it's hard to beat the state school experience. All right, let's get to the part of this discussion that's not all sunshine and happiness. Let's talk about the group that gets squeezed the hardest: middle and upper middle income families. These are the folks who earn too much to qualify for that great financial aid package, but not enough to comfortably write a check for that full sticker price. They've done things right, they've saved, they've planned, they've told their kids to aim high, and now they're staring down a total cost of $30,000, $50,000, even $85,000 a year, with the prospects for very little help. And that's, again, just the pain of high tuition. The real budget breakers: housing, Meal plans, mandatory fees, textbooks, laptops, parking passes. For these families, college doesn't feel quite like an investment. It feels like a debt trap. And the worst part, it can be very confusing to navigate the real costs until they feel like they're already committed. So what can we make of this whole situation? Yes, the cost of college has gone up, but so has financial aid, especially at the extremes. The problem is that the system is fragmented, it's confusing, and it is often misunderstood. The sticker price isn't the real price. But if that's all families see, they're making life-altering decisions on potentially misleading information. And that seems like a fixable problem. We don't need a time machine or alien math to solve college affordability. We just need better transparency, better communication, and policy decisions that prioritize students over headlines. But students and families have to have some skin in this game too. And that might mean foregoing a dream school across the country for one in-state. Many universities offer simple transfer opportunities from community colleges, meaning students only need to be on the hook for 2 or 3 years of higher tuition. Greater transparency, simpler explanations of the costs, and greater flexibility from parents and students could all lead to more affordable options and less student debt without changing anything in the current system, which of course will be a topic for future discussion. That's it for today's episode of So Long and Thanks for All the Innovation. If you found this helpful, or at least less confusing than your last FAFSA application, consider sharing it with someone else who's navigating the college gauntlet. Or, if you know someone who still thinks Harvard cost $85,000 no matter what, send them a link. You can find more analysis just like this over at my Substack. I hope you'll give it a visit. And next time on So Long, we will tackle the endowment conundrum. So grab the popcorn, settle in. Until next time, stay curious, stay caffeinated. Don't let the sticker price scare you off.